Story 1. In college, we were close friends but got separated after graduation. However, fate brought us together, and now we are happily married. I love him so much. Story 2. We were both looking at gala apples when I approached her. Just kidding, it was through a dating app. Now we're engaged. Story 3. An adoption event. She had the cutest little ears. And then she started licking my face. It was love at first sight. Story 4. I was kicked out of college, and when I got home, my father told me I had 2 hours to find a job. I walked into a clothing store called Merry-Go-Round. A 19-year-old greeted me, and I was in love. She was gorgeous, with hazel eyes and a bright smile. She gave me the job, and over a few weeks, we discovered we shared a birthday. Same day, month, year, and we were born in the same hospital 9 hours apart. We made each other laugh, and for months later, we were dating. We married at 23 and have been married for 30 years. Story 5. Went to a bar on New Year's Eve 2013 with my friends. The mission was to arrive already drunk and have a great time at the bar. Additionally, we aimed to find the most attractive woman in the bar and kiss her at midnight. Mission accomplished. 12 years graduate school, 2 cross-country moves, a wedding, a set of twins, and 3 cats later, we are still enjoying life. Story 6. It's mind-blowing, but I had been a single mother for about 2 years and was on plenty of fish off and on. Recently, I decided not to use it anymore after multiple bad experiences. The last one was with a guy named Adam, with whom I texted for a few weeks and met for a coffee date at a local park since we lived close to each other. On our 3rd date, he convinced me to come over, and we messed around, no sex. Then I found out he had a longtime girlfriend or fiancé. I ended it immediately and felt disgusted and discouraged from past experiences. I didn't have a smartphone, so the site was only accessible on a PC. About a month after quitting the app, I was checking my email at work and saw a message saying username is interested in you. I recognized that the guy's first name was Adam based on the username and thought it was the same guy with a new account. I logged in to confront him, but it turned out it wasn't the same person. Still unsure after what had happened, the site seemed to be just for hookups. Then, I received a message from him, and we started chatting. He asked what made me interested in him, which confused me since he had initiated contact. He mentioned he hadn't been on the app in a few weeks and received an email like mine that I was interested in him. I took it as a sign. We talked on the app for a few days, switched to texting, and after almost 2 weeks of constant, normal conversations, we arranged our first date. A few days before our date, he brought me lunch to work to ease the first meeting awkwardness. It was a perfect first date. We took a small cooler with a few beers and paid to walk on a local pier. It's the longest freestanding fishing pier in North America. We walked and found an empty sheltered area, sitting for hours just talking until we were freezing. It was night in early April. The pier had a restaurant and we sat at the bar, ordered some appetizers and drinks and kept talking. That night, I knew I was going to fall in love with him. The next morning, my roommate asked how it went and I told her, I'm going to marry that man. He's the one, and if I'm wrong, I give up. Well, I wasn't wrong. He was amazing with my 2 children, and they adored him. A year later, we found out we were expecting and moved in together. Right before our son turned 1, we got married. Last week marked the 12-year anniversary of that first date. We decided about a year in that this date would be our official anniversary. We are more in love than I ever thought possible. And every day, when I think I can't love him more, I do. He is absolutely my soulmate and best friend. We definitely believe we were together in previous lives and that we were always meant to find each other. And we will find each other again in the next life. A soulmate is not found. A soulmate is recognized. Story 7. I attended a friend's house party in college. I didn't think I had any charm or social skills, but conversation flowed naturally, and I asked for their number. We dated for a few years and eventually got married. We were married for almost 2 decades. During this time, their mental health declined significantly, and I became their caregiver. We weren't intimate in any way. Their hoarding became so severe that there was no space in the bedroom for me, so I slept in the attic of the $1.7 million house that I paid for. We had no sexual relationship, lived in a hoarder house, and ate takeout every day. After nearly 2 decades, they decided they were no longer a woman and expressed that it was a great insult to be someone's wife. When I couldn't endure it any longer, I asked if we could at least be intimate outside of marriage, as I had gone almost 2 decades without a sex life. They said this broke their heart, divorced me, took a low seven-figure sum from me, and I was required to support them for life according to California family law. Do not marry your college sweetheart. You think you know them, but many of us are just trying to figure out who we are. When I asked my ex about our sacred vows made in front of all our family and friends, they simply responded, "I'm not that person anymore." Story 8. She called me out of the blue. She had just moved into the neighborhood and was looking for kids her age to hang out with. She looked at the neighborhood directory, saw I was the same age, and reached out. We have been married for 22 years and together for 28. Story 9. She was a nanny for the baby of a chef who hired me as his kitchen assistant. I never thought I could love another person so much. Story 10. At work, I first saw her during her first week on the job. She was sitting on a couch scrolling through her phone. When she looked up at me, I quickly looked away, as I didn't want to give off any creepy vibes. One day, while she was in training, I walked by her and complimented her outfit, even though we work in a very casual environment. I asked if she had an interview elsewhere that day. The following day, I wore a similar outfit, a blue button-up shirt and gray slacks. She tried to walk up to me to ask the same question jokingly, but she couldn't get the words out because she was laughing. And the rest, as they say, is history. Story 11. They brought her out to me. I held her in my hands, and she licked my nose. I adopted her, and she has been with me ever since. Story 12. Coworker's stepson. My coworker said that you two have a lot in common, so he gave us each other's number. He was right, we hit it off immediately. Story 13. She worked as bar staff in a local pub, and I drank there regularly. One day, she brought her new puppy into the pub and needed someone to keep an eye on it while she was working. I'm a sucker for cute puppies and spent all night playing with it. I had such a good time that I volunteered to help out whenever necessary and ended up dog-sitting and walking for her most evenings. It wasn't about her at all. It was just the puppy. 30 years later, she's gone. But we had a great run and many unruly puppies. Story 14. This was when we were in our early 20s back in 2017. We were friends on Tumblr. She found me on OkCupid, and I forgot I linked my Tumblr there. I hadn't checked it in months. I didn't even realize we lived in the same town. Eventually, she left a suicide note on her blog. I freaked out and messaged her, expressing my concern. I really hoped she wasn't dead. She wasn't. She had been institutionalized. By this time, I knew we lived in the same place, so I reached out and suggested we hang out before she caught the bus. When I met up with her, I was surprised by how attractive she was. She is also the nicest person I have ever met. We've been together ever since, and there were only a few times we hung out before we officially started dating. She still struggles with severe depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. I am not the most mentally healthy person either, but we keep each other grounded. This is the healthiest relationship I have ever been in or even seen. Story 15. I was 13 and she was 9 when she kicked me. Dad filmed it on a camcorder. 13 years later, she showed up, things happened, and we got married quickly. Everyone thought she was pregnant, but she wasn't. Dad showed that video at the wedding reception. 13 years after that, we finally had a child. 9 years later, we are still married. Our child is pretty cool. Life is generally good, except for everything. Story 16. We worked together but never really spoke to each other since we were in different departments. I was outside smoking when she asked to borrow a cigarette, and the rest is history. 23 years later, neither of us smokes anymore. We have 2 beautiful daughters and are still just as in love as always. Story 17. I was 14, singing on stage in our high school auditorium. He was 20, playing the clarinet in the pit orchestra. I noticed his hair and caught his name. Fast forward 6 years, and we're chatting at a party, feeling those sparks. He was the wise guru of our friend group. By then, he was already involved with my classmate. They married, had a family, and divorced in 1995. I also married the wrong person and raised a family. My wrong partner passed away during the pandemic. I'm 64 now, finally married to that amazing guy, approaching our second anniversary. Story 18. High school. We were partnered for a project, and I fell for how funny and sweet he was. Only then did I realize, oh shoot, he's pretty cute. So, I asked him to Sadie Hawkins, and it flourished from there. We've been together for 11 years and married for 7. He's the love of my life, and I'm so crazy for him. He always tells me that it was love at first sight for him. He saw me and was instantly smitten. As he got to know me while we were working on the project, he knew I was the one for him. We are each other's first love, first everything. Story 19. After my last rejection, I put down all the dating apps and social media and decided to hit the gym. I don't think online dating is meant for me. Then I unexpectedly met someone there, and it has been consistent ever since, which would be myself. But really, I'm on a quest for self-fulfillment. I'm still single, but I hope to come across my person at some point. I just have to trust the process of life and the universe, and everything will fall into place when it's meant to. Until then, there's no need to stress about being single. It's simply out of my control, and it's much more fulfilling to focus on what I can control in my life. Story 20. At a temporary job, I told my friend, the first person I confided in about my preferences in the bedroom. He didn't react negatively, so we started dating. Story 21. We played Minecraft on Discord during the pandemic. We attended the same elementary school and had a mutual friend who created a gaming group. Story 22. Twitter. When I tell people, they often ask if I mean Tinder. To be fair, I think I have attended more Twitter weddings than any other kind. Story 23. My wife was one of my many bullies when I was 12. I was the new kid in town with hand-me-down clothes that didn't fit and a buzz cut because we couldn't afford regular haircuts. 20 years later, we've been together for nearly 8 years and have been married for just a month with 2 kids. Story 24. Doing charity work. We were packing lunches for food-insecure school children. The best person I have ever met. They were also attractive. Story 25. She started working with me. We began chatting and eventually texting, exchanging notes, bringing breakfast, and having lunch together now and then. Those were magical days. Story 26. We played soccer together in kindergarten. Then our schools consolidated in 7th grade, and we started dating as juniors. That was 23 years ago. Story 27. In 2003, during my junior year of high school, there was a retreat. She was a senior and a leader. As they walked by, my friend Grant said to her, "Do you know the sandwich man?" "Good, don't. He's the worst." And they kept walking. A few days later, I made my move. The following year, I became a leader with the same head teacher. He was addressing the student leaders and said, "Don't flirt with your group members." He knows what I'm talking about, gesturing at me. I had to explain that she and I weren't even in the same group. We literally didn't say a word to each other during that trip. It wasn't until the following week that things started to change. Story 28. The story I tell. I went to an arcade in Kabukicho, Tokyo, and saw an attractive person playing a music game that resembles a washing machine, called Mai. I asked her to teach me, and she did. We played a few games and then went to get bubble tea. After that, she invited me to a friend's bar in Takadanobaba, where we hung out until the last train. Story 29. I met him at my sister's after-party for her high school reunion. He was a friend of a friend. I walked up and asked him if he wanted to kiss. As a joke, much to his disappointment. We will celebrate 20 years together in May. Story 30. AOL Instant Messenger. She was the very first person I talked to when I got my first personal computer. We enjoyed our conversations and met up on a blind date since there were no webcams. After meeting, we discovered that we liked each other even more, so we dated for a few years. We moved in together to save money on rent, and then we found out we were expecting a baby. The next thing I knew, my brother and I were in tuxedos standing in front of a preacher. It was a wild time. Story 31. We were each other's work crush, but I didn't know he liked me. Eventually, I made a move, and he took me on the best date of my life. We have been obsessed with each other since. Story 32. In Birmingham, UK, we are at a pub watching a band we both loved. We have been together for 13 years and have an 8-year-old daughter. Story 33. On the side of the freeway, after my best friend hit a deer while carpooling to a party out of town, I was the other driver. Story 34. I met a friend through the game Smite on PlayStation 4. We played on and off for years, and he eventually introduced me to a friend of his. We entered a relationship very quickly and have been together for almost 3 years now. There is a 7-hour time zone difference, but nothing can break us. Story 35. Sleeping. In my dreams, maybe the love of my life doesn't exist, is living in another dimension, or simply will never meet. Some ended relationships, but endless love isn't available for me at the moment. Story 36. In guitar class, he initially attended morning classes but then switched to the evening batch. That's how we met. Story 37. I met my partner online while playing Overwatch. I added him because I thought he was good at the game. We teamed up and became friends. Then we started dating long distance. After we met in person, we fell in love and got married. He moved across the continent and the border to live with me in Canada. We have been happily married for 3 years now. Story 38. 20 years ago, I was sitting outside a coffee shop when she walked out and greeted me. Her friends had dared her to say hello. Story 39. The receptionist at our workplace asked us both individually to walk her dogs for her. She arranged for us to do the dog walk together, and we are still together 21 years later. Story 40. At the age of 14, drunk on a step at a local music festival, his friend fancied my friend and dragged him over. I noticed that he had a bottle of cider and decided to make friends with him. I want to be very clear that he was only 15. This was not a questionable situation. After 7 years as best friends, we eventually decided to add intimacy to our relationship, and it has all been great ever since. We are now well into middle age and still just as happy as ever. Even though he threw up on my shoes that first night we met, and even though it's appalling to think that in the 1990s it was acceptable in Britain for young teenagers to be drinking cider and smoking, we have had a very happy life together with hopefully plenty more good years ahead. Story 41. Though on an internet forum, she was looking for a walkthrough for a video game for one of her children and ended up posting there. Over time, we got to know each other, and flirting turned into a relationship. It didn't work out. She had 3 children and wanted more. This was a point of contention, and she sent me a breakup letter after 3.5 years of dating. There are still days I miss her, and I haven't seen her since 2009. Story 42. At a Leap Day party last year, hosted by a mutual friend, I met my partner for the first time. They had known each other from college, having been friends for a few years. I met her in January 2024 through a work project. She invited me to the Leap Day party she was organizing, where I ultimately met my partner. We were instantly drawn to each other and spoke throughout the night. We left the party together to continue our conversation in the driveway, even in 19-degree Fahrenheit weather. We exchanged numbers and texted each other after getting home, and had our first date 5 days later. We have been together ever since. Story 43. Before the internet was widely available, there were bulletin board systems. She is my ex-girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. Story 44. She got into a relationship and broke up a year later. I realized what a good woman I had actually lost. And here we are. Married in 2020, we've been together for almost 10 years. Story 45. She was a waitress at a nightclub. We have been happily married for 18 years and have a 3-year-old daughter. Story 46. It turns out that we worked in the same hospital but would never have bumped into each other due to our jobs and shift times. Story 47. We attended a social event during our first week at university and joined the same pub quiz team. We discussed the team name and who would be the captain, and it worked out well. Story 48. The first semester of college was in an acculturation class required for international students, thousands of kilometers away from our homes. That was about a decade ago. Story 49. On a daytime television talk show with Tom Bergeron in Boston, the topic was the best way to date. The man I was paired with called and invited me to dinner the next day. I moved in 2 days later, married 3 years after that, and we have been together for over 30 years. Story 50. I joined Twitter in 2009 but never engaged with it. In early 2012, I grew tired of Facebook, so I decided to give Twitter another try. I discovered tweets about topics I was interested in and began following people, as well as those they followed who seemed intriguing. In February 2012, while exploring someone's followers, I noticed a girl who made me think, wow, I've never seen anyone who looks like her. So I sent her a direct message. She responded, and within a month we started texting. Now, after 13 years and 600 miles later, I get to sleep by her side every single night. Story 51. In my senior year, she sat next to me and helped me realize how poorly my current girlfriend treated me. After a few months of friendship, she invited herself to my family's New Year's party. After the party, I asked her, "What is this?" Not my best line. 7 years later, we are planning our wedding, with venue tours booked for this weekend. Story 52. For those of you old enough to remember Usenet, I wrote X-Files fan fiction on alt.tv.xfiles.creative. She read my third novel, sent me an email, and we started corresponding. 27 years later, we've been married for 25 years. I moved from Arizona to Northern California to get married, gained 2 stepchildren, and now have 3 granddaughters. Good deal. Story 53. In the comment section on Instagram of a Rainbow Six Siege post, he asked if I wanted to play with him as he was looking for a team. We didn't play for a while, just exchanged a few messages here and there until I created a group chat, and we hit it off from there. He finally played Rainbow Six with me. Story 54. A good friend of mine was dating a good friend of hers. My buddy, his girlfriend, and I were at a bar when they invited her. They didn't want a double date. They simply invited her because she lived nearby. In fact, I had been in a relationship for over 2 years, and nobody would have ever thought to match us together. As she walked toward us on the sidewalk, I fell in love. It was love at first sight for me. Nothing happened between us initially, but I couldn't get her out of my mind. 3 weeks later, I broke up with my girlfriend and gradually set out to win this new girl over. Took about 6 months, but eventually we started dating. Everyone was surprised we were not alike. 3 months into our relationship, she realized it and said, "Oh my God, I'm going to marry you." I just laughed and replied, "Oh yeah, I've known that since we met." We have been married for almost 20 years now, and she still knocks me down. Story 55. I met him in the street shortly after moving to a small town. He rode up to me on a skateboard with a submarine sandwich, greeted me, and I couldn't believe someone so attractive had entered my life. He welcomed me to town and introduced himself. I eventually took a job at the local gas station, and he also secured a position there. It took a long and winding path, but now we are married, and I can't believe I lived for so long without him. Story 56. We joined the same writing club in our freshman year of college. At the time, we were both dating other people, but we quickly became close friends. Years later, after both of us had been single for a while, we did everything we could to pretend we weren't deeply in love to avoid jeopardizing our friendship. Eventually, she admitted her feelings to me, and 5 years later, we were married. Story 57. We lived in the same apartment building for several years, interacting in the mail and laundry rooms a few times. I had a big crush on him. My roommate and I called him Hot Neighbor Dan. Turns out he also thought I was cute but was too shy, so he found me on Tinder. Story 58. I haven't, and I probably won't. I'm a self-centered and narcissistic person. When you meet me at a bar, you start thanking God your partner is not like me. You thank God twice, even though you're an atheist. Story 59. We parked next to each other at a festival with other people at the time and reconnected 2 years later. We are expecting our second child now and have been married for almost 6 years. Story 60. I was browsing a dating site on Facebook one evening when suddenly I saw a picture of one girl, and it felt like a lightning bolt. I just knew she was the one. I never looked again and made contact with her. She was 4 hours away. We messaged back and forth and spoke on the phone continuously. 2 weeks later, she drove to meet me and we met. She stayed at a hotel and we saw each other the next day. After a few trips back and forth between us, we have been together ever since, going on 6 years now. It has been more than spectacular. Story 61. Introduced by a mutual friend at a bar. We will mark our 31st anniversary later this month. I know I am very lucky. Story 62. He was my teacher. Before anyone calls the police or the media, I had returned to college as an adult learner. He is only a year older than I am. We have been together on and off for 18 years and married for 12, in our second marriage. I couldn't be happier. Story 63. My dad married his mom. He was away at university when they had a whirlwind romance and got married in the United States. The next thing I knew, I had a new stepbrother who is 5 years older than me, and I developed an immediate crush on him. However, we didn't get together for a few more years because he is a gentleman and was conscious of the age difference. Eventually, I married my stepbrother. Story 64. Funny enough, I met her in a playful online game where we dressed up and chatted. We were friends for a long time because we lived across the country. Suddenly, we got the chance to meet in person, and the rest is history. Story 65. Still looking for my partner, but I am responsible for 2 marriages. Hopefully, the karma will come back around. I do have a perfect dog whom I love more than anything on the planet. Story 66. Body checked her so hard that she wet herself a little. It took us a good while to become friends before we actually got together, but she has been worth the wait. Story 67. I interviewed him. We are both volunteers in the same organization. He applied for the position while I was in charge of interviewing new candidates. Little did I know I was interviewing my future husband. 2 years later, we started dating, and we are now engaged and living together. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.